I installed a hidden camera in my own kitchen. I watched my daughter-in-law, Dr. Evelyn Hayes, crush a small, gray, unlabeled pill into my morning coffee. She looked around, smiled, and stirred it in. She and my son were convinced I was losing my mind. They had no idea I was just starting to see clearly for the first time in months. Before I tell you how I exposed their entire sickening plan, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe that underestimating the old man is always a mistake. My name is Benjamin Carter. I am 70 years old, and I am staring at a document that could make or break my company, a $50 million development contract, and I cannot read it. The numbers blur, swimming like black insects on the white page. My office here in my home on the Upper East Side is quiet. The antique grandfather clock my late wife Sarah loved ticks loudly in the silence. It is the only sound I can focus on. I try to pick up my pen, a heavy gold Mont Blanc. My hand shakes. Not a tremor, a violent, uncontrollable shake that rattles the pen against the solid mahogany desk. I grip my right wrist with my left hand, trying to force it still. It's useless. This is not me. This is not Ben Carter. The man who built Carter Holdings from nothing, from a single rented pickup truck and a tool belt 40 years ago, is not this trembling old man. The man who stared down union bosses and crooked city inspectors in the 80s does not get defeated by a piece of paper. But for the last 6 months, for the 6 agonizing months since my son Matthew and his wife Evelyn moved in to help me, I have been fading. The dizziness started first, then the shaking, and now this fog, this damned brain fog that makes the world feel like it's wrapped in cotton. The door to my study clicks open. I don't need to look up to know who it is. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, my daughter-in-law. My 44-year-old, highly respected geriatrician, my caregiver. She glides in silent on the plush carpet. She carries a small silver tray. On it sits my morning coffee and a small porcelain cup holding my daily pills. "Dad, are you trying to work again?" Her voice is smooth like honey poured over glass. It's the voice she uses when she talks to confused patients or to small children. "What have we said about stress? It's not good for your condition." I gesture vaguely at the contract. My hand flops weakly. "It's the Hudson proposal, Evelyn. It's important. 50 million. She places the tray down deliberately, moving the contract aside. Her perfume, something expensive and heavy, fills the air. "Nothing is more important than your health. You need to rest. You've earned it." She smiles, but her eyes are cold. They are always cold. "Now let's get your medicine in you." I look at the little pile of pills. The orange one for my blood pressure, the white one for cholesterol, and the big one, a dull, chalky gray capsule, unlabeled. It has no markings. "Evelyn," I say, and my voice sounds weak even to my own ears. "This shaking. It's getting worse, and this fog. I cannot think clearly. Are you sure these medications are right?" She sighs. It is a patient-practiced, tired sound. "Ben, we've been over this. You are 70 years old. You suffered a terrible loss. These are the natural progressive signs of aging. The fog is just, well, it's cognitive decline. It happens. It is nothing to be ashamed of." She pushes the small cup toward me. Her fingernails are perfectly manicured. "This one," she says, tapping the large gray pill, "is that special herbal vitamin I ordered for you from that clinic in Switzerland. I told you about it. It will help with the fog. It just needs time to build up in your system." I stare at it. It looks like compressed dust. But what do I know? I build buildings. She's the doctor. Matthew, my own son, the chief financial officer of my company, he trusts her completely. He is the one who insisted she take over my care. "Dad, she's the best," he said. "She will protect you." I feel helpless. Useless. A prisoner in my own home, in my own body. I tip the pills into my palm. My hand is shaking so badly I almost drop them. I have to steady it with my other hand just to get them to my mouth. I swallow them down with the lukewarm coffee she prepared. "There we go," she coos, taking the empty cup. "That's a good man. Now why don't you leave these boring papers alone? I'll have Matthew look at them later. He can handle it. You should go sit in the garden. It's a lovely day." I let her guide me out of my own office. I, Ben Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Holdings, being led from my desk like a disobedient child. I hate this. I hate feeling old. I hate feeling weak. And as she closes the study door behind me, I see her pick up the $50 million contract. I see her glance at it. And for just a second, I see a look on her face that isn't concern. It is calculation. I sat in the garden just as Evelyn had told me, but the sunshine brought no warmth. I felt dismissed, useless. I was staring at a rosebush Sarah had planted, trying to remember what it felt like to have a clear thought, when my pocket buzzed. It was my phone. I fumbled for it, my shaking hands almost dropping it on the stone path. I managed to answer the video call. It was Emily, my daughter. My 42-year-old, brilliant, stubborn daughter calling from Seattle. She's an architect out there, built her own life, always had a spine of steel, just like her mother. Her face appeared bright and smiling. "Dad, hi. I'm just taking a quick break between—" The smile vanished. It didn't just fade. It shattered. Her eyes widened, her face flooding with a sudden raw panic that jolted me more than the coffee. "Dad," she said, her voice sharp, different. "What's wrong?" "You look awful. You look terrible." I tried to smile. "Emily, honey, don't be dramatic. Your old man is just tired." "Tired," she shot back, leaning into her camera. "You look confused. Your eyes are glassy, and you're shaking. Why are you shaking so much?" I tried to hide my hand. "It's nothing. Just age." "No," she said loud enough to make me flinch. "That's not age. I just talked to you 2 weeks ago. Dad, you promised. You promised you were flying out to visit Leo last week, for his birthday. You promised you'd be here. We waited. I called and Evelyn said you weren't feeling up to travel. What happened? Did you forget?" I stared at her, blankly. "Leo, my grandson, his birthday. I had no memory of the promise. None. It was a complete black hole. I would never ever forget my grandson's birthday. But I had. The terror that gripped me then was cold, absolute. Evelyn had said this was just mild cognitive decline, a normal part of grieving and aging. But forgetting my own grandson. Forgetting a trip I apparently promised to take. This wasn't mild. This was an erasure. Emily was crying now, angry tears. "She's doing this," she whispered, her voice trembling with fury. "What are you talking about, honey?" "Evelyn." "Dad, I don't trust her. She controls everything you do. She answers your calls. She manages your schedule. She manages your medication. The last time I visited 6 months ago, you were fine. You were sharp. You were still you. Now you look like a ghost. Evelyn is a doctor, Emily. She's just helping. Helping." Emily's laugh was bitter. "Dad, she's isolating you. Are you on any new medication?" "Something you weren't on before. I thought of the gray, chalky pill, the herbal vitamin." I don't know. Just some vitamins she ordered. From Switzerland." "Vitamins from Switzerland," Emily repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Dad, listen to me. Listen to my voice. I want you to go to another doctor, a real doctor, someone who isn't her, someone who isn't family. Get a full blood panel, a full workup. Please, Dad, do it for me. Do it for Leo. Do it because the man I'm looking at right now is not my father." The call ended. I sat there in the garden, the phone heavy in my shaking hand. The sun was still shining. The roses were still beautiful. But everything had changed. Emily's panic, her certainty, it had pierced through the fog. She was right. I was being isolated. I was being managed. And that look I saw in Evelyn's eyes, it wasn't calculation. It was control. The fear was still there, but now it had a new companion, anger. Cold, sharp, and clear. Maybe this wasn't age. Maybe this wasn't decline. Maybe this was a setup. I had a plan. For the first time in 6 months, I had a single clear, independent thought. Emily was right. I had to see another doctor. And I had to do it without them knowing. The next morning I came downstairs dressed in a blazer and tie, not my usual loungewear. Evelyn was in the kitchen organizing my pill tray for the week. She looked up, surprised. "Dad? You're dressed. Are you going somewhere?" I had rehearsed the lie. It tasted like ash in my mouth, lying to my own family. But Emily's panicked face was seared into my mind. "Yes, I have lunch. An old friend from the Yale Club. Philip Hayes. You don't know him." I was a terrible liar. My hands were shaking, but this time it worked in my favor. It just made me look frail. Evelyn's smile was indulgent, the kind you give a child who thinks he has a secret. "The Yale Club, Dad, that's wonderful. A little social time will do you good. But are you sure you're up to the drive? Matthew could have his driver take you." "No." My voice was too sharp. I softened it. "No, I want to do it myself. I need to feel normal, Evelyn. Just for an afternoon. I'll be fine. Philip is expecting me at noon." She nodded, but her eyes were calculating. "All right. But you take your midday pills with you. And call me if you feel dizzy. Don't be a hero, Ben." She handed me the small pill bottle. I pocketed it, feeling like a spy in my own home. Getting to the garage was the first hurdle. My legs felt heavy. But the moment I was in my Mercedes, my S-Class, the one thing that still felt like mine, a surge of adrenaline cut through the fog. I started the engine. The drive to Dr. Kenji Tanaka's office in Midtown Manhattan should have taken 20 minutes. It took nearly an hour. The car, which I used to command with precision, now felt like a runaway beast. My hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel that I gripped it until my knuckles were white. I nearly clipped a taxi when I was slow to react at a light. The driver honked, yelling something I couldn't hear. I was trembling. This wasn't just old age. This was impairment. Evelyn's words echoed in my head, "Progression of your condition, Dad." And for a moment, I almost turned back. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was incompetent, a danger to myself and others. But then I remembered Emily's voice. I don't trust her. I found the building and fumbled the parking garage ticket, my shaking hand unable to feed it into the machine. A line of cars honked behind me. Humiliation burned my neck. Finally, the attendant had to get out of his booth and do it for me, shooting me a look of pity and annoyance. I walked into the lobby of the medical building. It was all glass and steel, the opposite of Evelyn's cozy wood-paneled office. Dr. Tanaka's suite was on the 18th floor. The waiting room was packed. Young professionals on their phones, mothers with children, people who looked busy and, most importantly, healthy. And then there was me, the 70-year-old man in an expensive suit that now hung on his frail frame, clutching a briefcase as if it were a life raft. I sat in the corner feeling like a complete imposter, a traitor. I was here behind my family's back, betraying the trust of my son and the woman who was, by all accounts, dedicating her life to caring for me. What if Evelyn was right? What if this Dr. Tanaka was a quack, as she would undoubtedly claim? What if he took one look at me and confirmed everything she'd said, that I was just a confused old man, ungrateful and paranoid, wasting everyone's time? But underneath the guilt, there was another feeling, a desperate, clawing hope, the hope that I was not crazy, the hope that this fog, this shaking, this prison of my own body was not a life sentence. the hope that Dr. Tanaka could look at me and find a reason, a fixable reason for all of it. "Mr. Carter," a nurse called. I stood up, my legs feeling weak. I picked up my briefcase, my hand trembling on the handle. This was it. I was about to find out if I was losing my mind or if someone was taking it from me. Dr. Tanaka's office was bright, almost sterile, flooded with the sharp afternoon light. He was a man in his early 40s, fit with sharp eyes behind minimalist glasses. He moved with an energy I hadn't seen in months. He didn't coddle me. He didn't speak to me in that soft, placating tone Evelyn used. He spoke to me like an equal. "Benjamin Carter," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. "My chart says 70, but your file from your last physical 2 years ago looks like a man of 55. Let's talk about what's changed." I sat down and the words just tumbled out. The shaking, the fog in my head that made thinking feel like wading through wet cement, the dizziness, the sudden terrifying memory lapses like forgetting my own grandson's birthday. I told him I felt like I was disappearing, like my own mind was betraying me. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He just typed, his fingers flying across his keyboard, his eyes fixed on me. "And your medications." I handed him the list Evelyn had neatly printed out for me. "My daughter-in-law manages my care. She's a geriatrician." He took the list and his eyes scanned it. I watched his face. For a moment it was neutral. Then he stopped. He scrolled back up. He frowned. It wasn't a small frown. His entire brow furrowed. He looked from the screen to me and back to the screen. "Mr. Carter," he said, and his voice was suddenly very quiet, very precise. "Who has been treating you previously?" I felt a small prickle of defensiveness. "I just told you. My daughter-in-law, Dr. Evelyn Hayes. She's one of the top geriatric specialists at Mount Sinai." Dr. Tanaka swiveled in his chair to face me fully. He steepled his fingers, and the silence in the room stretched out, filled only by the ticking of a digital clock on his desk. It was a long, heavy silence. When he finally spoke, his professional, brisk tone was gone. It was replaced by something much more serious. Grave. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I don't want to alarm you, but I am looking at your file, your EKG from 2 years ago, your blood pressure logs. You have mild hypertension. Mild. The dosage of metoprolol listed here, this beta blocker, it's dangerously high." I must have looked confused. "What do you mean?" Evelyn said she was just being cautious. "Cautious," he said, shaking his head, a look of disbelief on his face. "This is a dosage I would prescribe to a patient in end-stage congestive heart failure. Someone whose heart we are deliberately trying to slow down to prevent it from failing completely. For a man with your baseline, this amount of medication is enough to cause the exact symptoms you are describing. The brain fog, the tremors, the dizziness. It's textbook systemic overdrive." My heart hammered against my ribs. Are you saying she's wrong?" "I'm saying this dosage is highly, highly irregular," he said carefully. Then his eyes landed on the small, unlabeled vial I had placed on his desk. The gray vitamins. He picked it up, rolling one of the chalky capsules between his thumb and forefinger. "And what is this? You said she called it a vitamin?" "Yes, an herbal formula from Switzerland. She said it was to help with the fog." "It's not in your official chart," he said. He opened the vial and sniffed it. He looked at it under his desk lamp. "Mr. Carter, there is no such thing as a standard herbal vitamin from Switzerland that looks like this and isn't on a chart." He stood up abruptly. He looked at me and his eyes were now sharp-focused, like a detective who just found the crucial clue. "We're done talking," he said. "We need to act. I need blood, right now. A comprehensive panel. Liver function, kidney function, thyroid, and a full heavy metals panel." "Heavy metals?" I repeated the words, sounding foreign. "Like mercury, lead." Like lead, mercury, arsenic, and thallium, he said, his voice grim. I want you to stop taking this. He held up the gray pill immediately. As in, do not take another one. We are going to find out exactly what's in your system. What I'm seeing here, the combination of this extreme beta blocker dosage and a mysterious unlabeled compound. He paused, looking at me with a profound, sudden pity that terrified me more than anything. It doesn't just suggest a mistake, Mr. Carter. I suspect a severe toxic drug interaction. Or something else entirely. I left Dr. Tanaka's office in a state of shock. He had taken 6 vials of blood, a urine sample, and even a clipping of my hair, which he sealed in a small biohazard bag. Hair holds a record, Ben, he had said, his face grim. It tells us what you've been exposed to over months. I drove, but I don't remember the trip. I didn't go back to the Yale Club. I couldn't. I ended up parking on a quiet street overlooking the East River, the city lights just beginning to glitter as the sun went down. I couldn't go home. Not yet. I just sat there for hours, the car engine silent, the world moving around me while I was frozen in a cold, terrifying stillness. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was an unknown number. My hand, still plagued by that damned tremor, fumbled to answer it. This is Ben Carter. Ben, it's Dr. Tanaka. His voice was clipped professional. It was already 7 p.m. He was calling me after hours. That wasn't a good sign. Doctor, did you find something already? I did, he said. I rushed the preliminary panel. The full toxicology and the metals will take several days, but the initial blood work is back. And Ben, your liver enzymes are frankly astronomical. They are so high, I'm surprised you're not jaundiced. This isn't just a statin reaction. This is a sign of active, significant liver distress. Your body is fighting something toxic. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. What does it mean? It means we need to act fast. We also found traces of a strange compound, an alkaloid signature I can't immediately identify without the full analysis, but it absolutely should not be in your bloodstream. I thought of the gray, chalky pill, the vitamin. Ben, I'm calling you with instructions, not suggestions, he said, his voice hardening with urgency. I want you to stop taking that vitamin immediately. Do not take another dose. And the beta blocker, the metoprolol, I want you to cut that dose in half starting tonight. Do not stop it cold. Your heart can't take that shock. But we must wean you off this dangerously high level. I'll call in a prescription for the correct lower dosage to your nearest pharmacy. Go pick it up tonight. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel fear. I felt air. I could breathe. The first feeling that washed over me was a profound, earth-shattering wave of relief. It was so intense I started to laugh, a dry, choked sound in the empty car. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. I wasn't a confused old man. My mind wasn't failing me. My body wasn't betraying me. They were. The relief lasted for exactly 10 seconds, and then the horror set in, cold and absolute. Evelyn, Dr. Evelyn Hayes, my daughter-in-law, the woman I trusted with my life, the woman I welcomed into my home, the woman sleeping under my roof. What is she doing to me? This wasn't an accident. This wasn't malpractice. This was deliberate. The high-dose beta blocker to make me foggy and weak, to create the very symptoms of cognitive decline she claimed to be treating. And the strange compound, the vitamin, was that accelerating it? Was it the poison itself? My blood ran cold. I started the car. I wasn't going to a pharmacy. I was driving home. I was driving into the lion's den. I walked into my home. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled the air. Laughter. I heard laughter coming from the formal dining room. I walked to the doorway. The scene in front of me was so normal, so domestic, it was grotesque. Matthew and Evelyn were sitting at the head of the long mahogany table, my wife Sarah's table. They were sharing a bottle of expensive red wine. They were laughing about something Matthew had said on his phone. They didn't hear me approach. They looked happy, relaxed, like a couple enjoying a quiet evening now that the problem me was supposedly out of the house. "Enjoying yourselves?" My voice cut through the room like a razor. They both jumped. Evelyn's hand flew to her chest, her smile frozen in place. Matthew spilled some wine on the tablecloth. "Dad," Matthew exclaimed, standing up too quickly. You're home. I thought you were at the club. We didn't expect you for dinner." "Clearly," I said. I walked steadily toward the table. The fog was still there, a dull hum in my skull, but the rage was a searchlight, white-hot and absolute, cutting right through it. "Ben, you look pale," Evelyn said, starting to recover her doctor mask, slipping back into place. "Did you overdo it? You should sit down." "I'm not sitting down," I said. "I didn't go to the Yale Club." I reached into my blazer pocket. I pulled out the bottle of high-dosage metoprolol, the bottle she had refilled just 2 days ago. "Where did you go, Dad?" Matthew asked, his tone shifting from surprise to suspicion. I looked at Evelyn. I looked at the woman who had smiled at me that morning while giving me pills to fog my mind, pills that were actively destroying my liver. I threw the bottle onto the table. It wasn't a gentle toss. I slammed it down. The plastic bottle clattered hard against the fine china, rattling the plates and splashing wine from their glasses. Evelyn gasped. Matthew stared at the bottle, his face pale. "I went to see a new doctor," I said, my voice low and shaking, but not from weakness, from fury. "A real doctor, and he told me exactly what you're doing." I locked my eyes on Evelyn, and for the first time I saw her mask crack. I saw the flash of pure, cold panic underneath. "He said this dosage isn't treatment." I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper that filled the suddenly silent room. "He said it's poisoning." Evelyn's face, which had been relaxed and smiling, transformed. But it wasn't fear I saw. It was offense. Pure theatrical wounded offense. She stood up so quickly her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. Her hand flew to her pearls, a gesture of pure, scandalized shock. "Poisoning!" she repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "Dad, what are you? How could you say that?" Her eyes widened, and to my astonishment, they began to fill with tears. "You went behind my back." She stepped away from the table as if my accusation was a physical blow. "You went to another doctor without telling me you doubt my expertise. Evelyn, he said the dose was... He said..." She cut me off, her voice sharp with indignation. "Who is he? Who is this Dr. Tanaka, some random general practitioner in a strip mall? Does he know your history? Does he know the complexity of your cardiac condition? I spent 10 years in medical school and residency at Johns Hopkins. I am a board-certified geriatric specialist. And you take the word of some stranger over mine." She had completely seized the narrative. She wasn't the accused. I was. I was the one who had committed a betrayal. Matthew shot up from his chair, his face red with anger. He moved to Evelyn's side, putting a protective arm around her shoulder as she performed her sob. "Dad, this is ridiculous. What is wrong with you?" He pointed an accusing finger at me. "You're hurting her. Can't you see that this woman has put her life on hold to take care of you? She monitors your meals. She manages your prescriptions. She is here day in and day out when Emily is halfway across the country. And this is how you repay her, by sneaking around and throwing insane accusations in her face." His words hit me harder than Evelyn's because they were in part true. I did remember. After Sarah died, I was a wreck. The grief was a physical weight I couldn't carry. The house was empty. The company felt meaningless. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I had been terrified of dying alone, of suffering a stroke like my own father had. I remembered sitting in this very dining room, a broken man pleading with them. "Matthew, Evelyn, please, help me. I don't trust myself. Evelyn, you're a doctor. Please, just handle it. Handle my health. I can't think about it. I had handed them the keys to my life. I had begged them to take control. And now they were using that very moment of vulnerability as a weapon against me. Dad? Matthew continued, his voice softer, now disappointed. You have no idea what she's done for you. The sleepless nights she's had worrying about your blood pressure, researching new treatments, all for you to throw it back in her face because some new doctor who doesn't know you at all scared you. Evelyn dabbed at her eyes with a linen napkin. I just can't believe it, Ben. I thought we trusted each other. I thought we were family. I stood there momentarily stunned. The force of their combined offense was a physical wall. They were so united, so certain. My own rage, which had been so clear and sharp in the car, now felt muddled, confused. Could I be wrong? Would Dr. Tanaka in his bright modern office have made a mistake? Was he just an alarmist? Was Evelyn right? I looked at the bottle on the table. But the dosage, Evelyn. He said it was for end-stage heart failure. The fog in my head was thickening again, the adrenaline fading, replaced by doubt. My hands began to shake. This was their moment. This was the masterstroke. And Evelyn played it perfectly. Evelyn didn't just look offended. She began to cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but the quiet, heartbreaking tears of someone who has been deeply, unfairly wounded. It was a devastatingly effective performance. The vitamin, she said, her voice trembling. She shook her head as if she couldn't believe my cruelty. Dad, that vitamin is an advanced homeopathic compound from a private clinic in Zurich. It's not something you can just get at Walgreens. It's not FDA approved yet, which is why, of course, Dr. Tanaka wouldn't know about it. It's cutting-edge treatment for memory support. She wiped a tear from her cheek. It's incredibly expensive. I pay for it out of my own pocket. I don't use the estate funds. I wanted to help you. I wanted you to have the best. I thought it was working. I felt a twist of guilt. She was paying for it herself. I had just thrown her generosity back in her face. And the metoprolol, I stammered, feeling my certainty crumble. He said the dose. He said... She snapped, a flash of protective anger cutting through her tears. Did he tell you that you had a mild atrial fibrillation episode 6 months ago, did he? I just stared at her. Atrial fibrillation. An irregular heartbeat. That was serious. No, I said weakly. I don't remember that. Of course you don't, she cried, throwing her hands up in the air. That's part of the condition, Ben. You were dizzy, you nearly fainted in the library. Matthew had to catch you. We took you for an EKG. I was terrified. I've been terrified ever since. Matthew, seeing his cue, stepped forward, his voice low and serious. She's right, Dad. You were white as a sheet. You kept saying you just felt strange. Evelyn handled everything. She consulted with a cardiologist. They decided to increase the beta blocker dose to control your heart rate to prevent a stroke. Evelyn pointed a trembling finger at me. That quack. He told you to cut the dose. He is actively putting your life at risk. He could kill you. And you believe him over me, over your own family. The room was spinning. I didn't remember the AFIB episode. I didn't remember the cardiologist. I didn't remember Matthew catching me. But I also hadn't remembered promising to visit Emily. I hadn't remembered my own grandson's birthday. The doubt was a cancer. It was eating my confidence, my anger, my very reality. What if they were the ones telling the truth? What if my memory was so shattered, so full of black holes that I was now fabricating conspiracies? What if Dr. Tanaka in his brief 20-minute exam had missed the whole picture, and I had just accused my loving daughter-in-law of attempted murder, when she was in fact the only thing keeping me from a massive stroke? I looked at their faces. Matthew looking at me with profound, weary disappointment. Evelyn crying silently into her napkin, her shoulders shaking. The shame was overwhelming. I felt like a monster. A paranoid, ungrateful, senile old fool. "Evelyn," I started, my voice hoarse. "Matthew, I'm sorry." I took a step back. I didn't know. I was confused. The doctor, he just said it looked high. I didn't understand." Evelyn wouldn't even look at me. She just kept her face hidden, shaking her head. Matthew sighed, a long, heavy sound of a son burdened by a difficult father. "It's okay, Dad. We get it. You're scared. You're confused. But you can't do this. You can't just go running off and listening to strangers. We are trying to protect you. Evelyn is the only reason you are stable. You have to trust us." "I do," I said, feeling about 2 inches tall. "I do trust you. I'm sorry, Evelyn. Truly. I must have overreacted. I was just scared by what he said." Evelyn finally looked up, and her eyes red and puffy. Just promise me you won't go back to him, Ben. Promise me you won't stop the medication I'm giving you. I'm trying to keep you alive." "I promise," I whispered. I'll take my medicine. I'm sorry for this. I'll just go upstairs. I'm very tired." I turned and walked out of the dining room. I felt their eyes on my back, a heavy weight of pity and disappointment. I was so ashamed of myself, of my failing mind, of my ingratitude. I didn't look back. If I had, I would have seen Matthew put his arm around Evelyn's waist, pulling her close. I would have seen her tears stop instantly, as if a faucet had been turned off. I would have seen the cold, triumphant smile they exchanged as they heard my footsteps retreating, defeated, up the stairs. I went upstairs to my bedroom, but I did not get in bed. I sat in the dark for hours in the armchair Sarah used to read in, staring at the lights of the city I had helped to build. The scene in the dining room replayed in my mind, again and again. Evelyn's tears, Matthew's righteous anger, my own crushing, debilitating guilt. But the more I replayed it, the more it felt wrong. It was not just a good explanation. It was a perfect one. It was hermetically sealed. Every objection I had was met with a flawless, emotionally devastating answer. My memory gap about the atrial fibrillation, that was proof of my condition. The high dosage that was preventing a stroke. The new doctor. He was an ignorant quack who was endangering my life. Her performance was flawless. But maybe that was the problem. It was a performance. The tears were instant. The indignation was precise. The story about the Swiss vitamin paid for out of her own pocket was designed to make me feel like the lowest, most ungrateful man on earth. And it had worked. But now in the silence, the cold logic that had built Carter Holdings began to surface, pushing through the fog. A new thought emerged, sharp and clear. If I am so cognitively impaired, so confused and paranoid, how did I have the clarity to seek a second opinion in the first place? The two ideas canceled each other out. Evelyn was telling me I was too sick to trust my own mind, but my mind had just done something perfectly rational. I had to know. I decided to do what any man who has built an empire does. I would run an analysis. I would isolate the variables. Dr. Tanaka had identified two primary issues: the dangerously high beta blocker dosage and the mysterious unlabeled vitamin. Evelyn's terrifying story about the stroke had cornered me. If I stopped the metoprolol and she was telling the truth, I could die. That was a risk I wasn't willing to take. Not yet. But the gray pill, the vitamin, that was the variable. She claimed it was helping the fog. Dr. Tanaka suspected it was causing the toxicity. One of them was lying, and I was going to find out which one. I promised her I would take my medicine. I would not keep that promise. The next morning, Evelyn entered my room with the silver tray. Her smile was back, but now it looked different to me. It looked brittle. "Good morning, Dad. I'm so glad you're feeling more like yourself. I brought your coffee and your pills." I sat up in bed, performing my role as the frail, apologetic old man. "Thank you, Evelyn. I am so sorry about last night." "Shh, it's forgotten," she cooed. "Just rest." She watched me. I knew she would be watching. She needed to ensure her patient was compliant. I picked up the handful of pills. My hand was shaking terribly, the tremor amplified by my nerves and the high dosage of the beta blocker. But for the first time, I used the tremor to my advantage. As my shaking hand came to my mouth, I let the pills rattle against my teeth. In that split second of spastic movement, I used my tongue to push the large gray capsule into my cheek, swallowing the others with the coffee. It was a trick my father taught me when I was a boy, trying to avoid bitter aspirin. I smiled weakly at her. "See, all gone." She smiled back, satisfied. "Good. Now I have rounds at the hospital. Matthew is working from home today. Just call if you need anything." The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I ran to the bathroom. I spat the gray, partially dissolved pill into the toilet. I flushed it. It felt like a gunshot in the silent house. A small, terrifying act of rebellion. That was day 1. I was still taking the high-dose beta blocker, so the tremors and dizziness remained. The fog was just as thick. A gnawing kernel of doubt began to eat at me. What if I was wrong? What if that gray pill really was the only thing holding my mind together? What if I was flushing my last chance at clarity down the drain? Day 2. I repeated the charade. Evelyn brought the tray. I palmed the pill. I flushed it. I spent the day feeling shaky, disoriented, and deeply depressed. I tried to read the newspaper, but the words still wouldn't connect. I began to despair. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe I was just a paranoid old man. Then came day 3. I woke up. The light in the room felt different, sharper. I sat up. The usual wave of dizziness that greeted me every morning. It was still there, but it was less. It wasn't a tidal wave. It was just a ripple. Evelyn brought the tray. I palmed the pill. I flushed it. She left for the hospital. I sat in the library, not my study, just to be in a different space. Matthew was on a conference call in his office. I was alone. My clean coffee sat on the table. I looked at the Wall Street Journal lying next to it. For months, it had been gibberish. A collection of symbols I recognized but could not string together. I picked it up. I looked at the headline. Federal Reserve signals aggressive stance on inflation. I read the first sentence. Markets reacted predictably Tuesday as the Fed chairman confirmed that quantitative tightening would accelerate through the fourth quarter. I read the entire paragraph, and then I read the entire article, and I understood it. I understood the financial implications. I understood the bond market analysis. I felt a surge of adrenaline so powerful my heart skipped a beat. I grabbed a napkin and the pen from the side table. My hand was still shaking, the beta blocker was still doing its work, but I gripped the pen. I wrote 14 times 28. I did the math in my head the way I used to. 14 times 10 is 140. 14 times 8, 112. 140 plus 112. I wrote down 392. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling with the tremor. I opened the calculator. 14 times 28. The result, 392. I dropped the phone on the table. And I began to cry. Not the staged tears of Evelyn. These were silent, hot tears of pure, unadulterated vindication. It had been 72 hours. 72 hours since I had taken that gray pill. The tremor was still there. Dr. Tanaka was right. The beta blocker was still poisoning my motor skills. That was a separate, very real problem. But the fog, the oppressive, identity-stealing, debilitating fog, was lifting. It wasn't age. It wasn't grief. It wasn't dementia. It was the pill. Evelyn's story about the atrial fibrillation and the Swiss vitamin was a lie. A perfect, elaborate, terrifying lie designed to cover up the fact that the vitamin wasn't a vitamin at all. It was the fog machine. They weren't trying to prevent my cognitive decline. They were causing it. My anger returned, but this time it wasn't hot and confused. It was ice cold. And it was permanent. They were lying. They were poisoning me. Now I had to find out why. I felt a cold, hard clarity I hadn't known for half a year. The fog was gone, but the tremor remained a constant, frustrating reminder of the beta blocker still polluting my system. But I could think. And my first coherent thought was my company, Matthew, my son, my chief financial officer, the person I had personally trained for 20 years to take my place, the person I had handed the financial reins to when Sarah died, trusting him completely. If Evelyn was lying about my health, was Matthew lying about my company? I didn't call. I didn't announce my visit. I put on my best suit, the one I used to wear for board meetings, and had my driver take me to the Carter Holdings building in Midtown. The building I built. The lobby was bustling. It was 10 a.m. on a Thursday. People I'd known for decades, project managers, accountants, architects, did a double take when they saw me. Their faces showed a mixture of surprise and pity, as if they were seeing a ghost. "Mr. Carter," they'd murmur, "good to see you, sir." But their eyes darted away, uncomfortable. They had all heard the rumors. The old man was failing. The old man was losing his mind. Matthew was in charge. I walked straight to the executive floor, straight to my own corner office. The door was closed. Matthew was inside, feet up on my desk, laughing on a phone call. He looked up as I pushed the door open, and his face dropped. The smile vanished, replaced by sheer, unfiltered annoyance. "Dad," he said, snapping his feet to the floor. "What are you doing here? You should be at home. You're supposed to be resting." He was already out of his chair, moving toward me, his hands out in that gentle, placating way, as if trying to herd a confused animal back into its pen. "I'm here to work, Matthew," I said. My voice was raspy, but it was firm. "Work, Dad, no. We talked about this." He tried to put a hand on my shoulder to steer me back out the door. "You don't need to worry about this stuff anymore. I've got it all handled. Everything is fine." I pushed his hand off me. Not violently, but with a strength that surprised us both. "This is still my office, Matthew. This is still my company. Get out of my chair." He froze. He hadn't been spoken to like that in months. The son who had looked at me with pity now looked at me with a flash of cold anger. But he backed away. He knew that tone of voice. It was the tone that had built this building. "Fine," he said, smoothing his expensive tie. "Fine. But Dad, you're just going to get yourself agitated. You'll get confused. Evelyn said—" "I don't care what Evelyn said," I cut him off. "I want to see the numbers." I buzzed my assistant, Martha. She'd been with me for 35 years. She was the one person in this building who I knew without a doubt was loyal to me, not to my son. She hurried, in her face a mask of worry. "Mr. Carter, sir, it's good to see you." "It's good to be seen, Martha," I said. "Please get me the consolidated financial reports for the last quarter. Full balance sheet, profit and loss, and a list of all active loans and liens against our properties. Now." "Of course, sir," she said, glancing nervously at Matthew, who was now leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a toxic smirk on his face. "Dad, you're not going to understand those," Matthew said, his tone condescending. "It's complex. We've restructured some debt. It's all part of the new growth strategy." "Then you can sit here and explain it to your confused old father," I said, sitting down in my chair. It felt good. Martha returned in 5 minutes with a thick binder. She placed it in front of me with a small, encouraging nod. I opened it. Matthew kept talking. It's all about leveraging our assets, Dad. The market is perfect for it. We're moving into that new Hudson Yards West project I told you about. It's going to be huge. I ignored him. My eyes, now clear, scanned the pages. Assets, liabilities, cash flow. It was my native language, a language I hadn't been able to speak for 6 months. I read it all, and then I saw it. It was under the liabilities schedule, a new entry, a long-term note. I stopped. I read it again, and again. The numbers were clear. Matthew, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Yeah, Dad, he said, still looking bored. There is a $10 million loan here, dated 3 months ago. Right, he said. Like I said, that's the bridge loan for Hudson Yards West. We're moving fast on it. I looked up from the page, my entire body ice cold. A $10 million bridge loan, secured by this building, secured by our headquarters. It's just a formality, Dad. The bank needed prime collateral. It's smart business. I stared at him. The blood was pounding in my ears. Smart business, Matthew. I built this company on one principle: we do not leverage our core assets. Ever. We build with our own cash. We own everything outright. You know that. And you never, ever take out a loan of that size without my express written approval. He sighed, pushing himself off the wall. Dad, I have your approval. You signed the papers. What? You signed them, right at home in your study, about 3 months ago. You and me and Evelyn, we went over the whole thing. You were excited about it. He even laughed. You don't remember, Dad. It's okay. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is why you need to rest. I looked at him. I looked at his calm, pitying face. And I knew with the same certainty that I knew my own name that I had never seen discussed or signed any $10 million loan. I had never not in my right mind mortgaged my company's home. I was not losing my mind. I was being robbed. $10 million. I repeated, my voice low and cold. I looked up from the binder and stared at my son. You're telling me you took out a $10 million loan against this building, and I approved it? Matthew didn't flinch. He just sighed. It was a long, theatrical, put-upon sigh, the kind a man gives when he's dealing with an unreasonable, difficult relative. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a picture of weary patience. Dad, we've been over this, he said, his voice dripping with that toxic pity I was beginning to recognize. We had a whole meeting about it, right at home, in your study. We did not, I said. I would remember mortgaging my own headquarters, Matthew. But you don't remember Dad, he said, stepping closer. He spoke softly, as if I were a frightened animal he was trying to calm. That's the problem. That's what Evelyn and I have been trying to manage. He leaned against the desk, projecting an aura of complete control. We were all there. It was about 3 months ago, a Tuesday evening. Evelyn brought you your tea, the new herbal kind she got you. We sat on the leather couches. I spread out the entire prospectus for the Hudson Yards West project. He was painting a memory for me, filling in the black holes in my mind with his own fiction. It was terrifying. We talked about it for an hour. He continued, his voice smooth and reassuring. We discussed the leveraging strategy, the interest rates. Dad, you were excited. You said it was the boldest move the company had made in a decade. You said it reminded you of when you were young. You applauded. My mind raced, trying to find the memory. A Tuesday, tea, the study. I remembered nothing. Just fog. 6 months of fog. But I would remember that. Wouldn't I? I don't remember that, Matthew. I would not approve this. We have 40 million in liquid cash reserves. Why would we take on debt and risk this building when we could fund it ourselves? He shook his head, that look of profound, sorrowful disappointment on his face. It was the look that had made me feel so guilty in the dining room. See, this is what I mean. We talked about that too. I explained that we needed to keep the cash reserves free for opportunistic acquisitions. That leveraging the building at this low interest rate was a much smarter financial move. You agreed, Dad. You said I was right. I don't believe you, I whispered, but the clarity I'd felt just an hour ago was beginning to waver. That icy fear was returning. You don't have to believe me, Dad, he said, and his voice was so kind it was cruel. He turned to his large monitor, clicked his mouse a few times. Just look. You signed the loan agreement. He turned the screen toward me, and there it was, the signature page of the bank agreement. A $10 million note from Chase Manhattan, secured by the deed to the Carter Holdings building. And at the bottom on the line marked Benjamin Carter, CEO, was my signature. I stared at it. It was perfect. The familiar loop of the B, the sharp, impatient slash of the T. It was mine. It wasn't a crude forgery. It was flawless. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand, the one that was still trembling from the beta blocker, reached out to the screen. I touched the digital image. Had I done this? Had I sat in my study wrapped in a chemical fog and signed away my company's home? Had I been excited about it? Had I applauded? You don't remember, do you? Matthew asked, his voice now a gentle, heartbreaking murmur. You don't remember any of it. I sank back into my chair. The room felt like it was tilting. The man who had entered this office an hour ago, cold and certain, was gone. In his place was a terrified old man. Dad, Matthew said, sitting on the edge of the desk next to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. This is it. This is exactly why Evelyn and I are so worried. This is why we're trying to get you to rest. You're having massive memory lapses. You're signing off on $10 million deals and forgetting them an hour later. You're not just confused, Dad. You're sick. You need help. I looked at my perfect signature. I looked at his concerned, loving face. I was trapped. He had an answer for everything. He had proof. I was no longer sure what was real and what was the fog. Was I a victim, or was I just losing my mind? I stood up, shaking. I have to go. Dad, wait. Let me have my driver take you home. You're in no condition to. I said I have to go. I snapped, pulling away from his touch. I walked out of the office, past Martha's worried face, past the pitying looks of my employees. I didn't know what was true anymore. I only knew one thing. I had signed it. Or I hadn't. Either way, I was in more trouble than I could have ever imagined. I didn't let Matthew's driver take me. I drove myself. My hands were clamped onto the steering wheel, the tremor from the metoprolol still shaking them, yet my mind was grinding, analyzing, replaying the scene in the office. You signed it, Dad. You don't remember. His voice, so calm, so full of pity. He had an answer for everything. He had a memory for every black hole. He had proof. When I got home, the house was silent. Evelyn was still at the hospital. Matthew was at the office. I was alone. I went straight to my study. I turned on my computer, my fingers clumsy and shaking, and accessed the company server. I pulled up the scanned loan document that Matthew had shown me. There it was. My signature. Benjamin Carter. I stared at it for 10 minutes. It was beautiful. The strong upstroke on the B, the confident flow of the Carter. It was the signature of a man in his prime, a man in complete control. I pulled open the top desk drawer. I took out my checkbook. I took out a pen. I tried to sign my name on a blank piece of paper. My hand shook. The pen dragged across the paper. The B was jagged. The C was wobbly. The tremor, the one Evelyn said was just age, and Matthew ignored, made my signature look like a seismograph reading. It was the signature of a sick man. It was my signature as it had been for the last 6 months. I held the shaky, pathetic signature I had just written next to the flawless, powerful signature on the computer screen. They were not the same. The one on the screen, it wasn't just perfect. It was too perfect. It was the signature I used to have 5 years ago. Before Sarah died. Before the fog. Before the shaking. It wasn't a signature. It was a file copy. It was a digital stamp. You don't remember, Dad. My blood ran cold. He was right. I didn't remember signing it. I didn't remember signing it because I had not signed it. Matthew had lied. He hadn't just allowed me to sign something in a confused state. He had bypassed me entirely. He had forged it. He had taken my authority, my name, and used it to mortgage the company I built. The $10 million question was, why? Why not just ask me why the elaborate deception smart business, he'd called it, keeping cash reserves free? It sounded plausible, but it wasn't my way of doing business. I built my empire on avoiding debt, on owning our assets outright. This wasn't a new strategy. This was a betrayal of my core philosophy. I was pacing the length of my study, my mind racing, truly racing, connecting dots for the first time. The fog was gone, replaced by a terrible burning clarity. The shaking in my hands was just a distraction. The real poison was the one that had clouded my mind, the one I had flushed down the toilet 3 days ago. They were causing the symptoms to cover the crime. The front door opened. I heard Evelyn's voice in the foyer calling out for Matthew. I quickly shut down the computer screen. I sat in my chair, trying to look as I had, before confused, tired. She didn't come to the study. I heard her footsteps on the hardwood floor, moving to her own office down the hall. I crept out of my study. Her door was slightly ajar. I stood in the shadows of the hallway, listening. She wasn't talking to a colleague. Her voice was low, tense, and angry. "I don't care what the timeline is, you need to move it faster," she whispered into her phone. A pause. "No, he's not a problem. He's exactly where we need him to be. He's completely confused." My fists clenched. She was talking about me. "He actually went to the office today," she said with a dry, humorless laugh. "Matthew handled it. He showed him the loan papers. Ben didn't remember a thing. He's putting in our hands." Another pause. Her voice dropped even lower, becoming sharp, urgent. "Listen to me. The money has to be moved by the 30th. All of it. The buyers are lined up. Once he's declared incompetent, we have a very small window to liquidate before the audits. I don't care about your excuses. Just get it done." I must have made a sound, a sharp intake of breath, a shuffle of my feet. Her voice stopped. The silence was absolute. Slowly, I saw her shadow move. She appeared at the doorway, her cell phone clutched in her hand. Her eyes widened when she saw me standing there in the dim hallway. She was cornered. For a split second, I saw pure, cold panic in her face. Then the mask slammed back into place. The panic vanished, replaced by a bright, strained smile. "Dad, you startled me," she said, her voice a little too high, a little too fast. "I was just on the phone with the hospital. A scheduling nightmare. You know how the administrators are. Just hospital business." She brushed past me, walking toward the kitchen. "You must be hungry. Let me fix you some tea. You look pale." I watched her walk away. I watched this woman who was actively, systematically poisoning me, who was plotting to have me declared incompetent, who was liquidating my life's work, walk away to make me a cup of tea. I didn't follow her. I went back to my study and locked the door. It was all true. All of it. I was not crazy. I was not senile. I was a victim, and they had just confirmed it. They were liquidating, moving money, a small window before the audits. This wasn't just about a $10 million loan. This was something bigger. This was a full-scale robbery, and they were using my own mind as the weapon against me. The game was over. Now I was going to change the rules. I locked the study door, something I hadn't done in years. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. The fog was gone, replaced by a chilling, absolute certainty. They were trying to destroy me, liquidate before the audits, declare him incompetent. He's putting in our hands. I sat at my desk, my hands still shaking from the damn beta blocker, but my mind was a steel trap. I was 70 years old, I was being poisoned, and I was being robbed by my own son. A part of me wanted to storm down the hall to confront them, to scream. But that was the confused old man they wanted. That was the man who would lose. No, the man who built Carter Holdings from scratch was a planner, a strategist. And right now I needed allies. I was alone in this house, surrounded by enemies. I picked up my personal cell phone, the one Evelyn didn't monitor. My fingers fumbled the tremor, making it difficult to dial. "Lawson and Finch," a crisp voice answered. "Gary," I said, my voice low and urgent. "It's Ben. Are you free?" There was a pause. Gary Lawson wasn't just my lawyer for 40 years. He was my best friend. We'd been roommates at Yale. He was the best man at my wedding. He was the first person I called when Sarah died. "Ben." His voice changed instantly, shedding the professional tone replaced by the worry of a friend. "You sound terrible. What's wrong?" "Is it your health?" "It is," I said, "but not in the way you think. Gary, I'm in a big ugly mess. I know Matthew and Evelyn are trying to swindle me, and maybe worse." Another pause, this one heavy-loaded. "Ben," Gary said, his voice grim. "I've been worried for the last year. Ever since you handed Matthew full financial control. I tried to tell you to suggest more oversight, but you said, I know what I said. I cut him off, shame burning in my throat. I told you to trust my son. I was a fool, Gary, a sentimental old fool, and I think they're drugging me. My God." He didn't question it. He didn't tell me I was paranoid. He just believed me. "Don't say another word. Not in that house. I'm on my way." "No," I said, panicked. "You can't come here. She's here. Evelyn, they're watching me. They monitor me." "Ben," Gary's voice was firm, pulling me back from the edge. "Listen to me. I am not coming to your house. I am going to my office. I am bringing in Harrison, my forensic guy, the best. We are going to meet, but not there. Can you get out? Can you get away clean without them knowing where you're going?" "Yes," I said, my mind already working. "I'll make an excuse. A long lunch, something." "No, not lunch. You need a bigger window, a trip." "A trip?" The word sparked an idea. "Emily." "My daughter." I said, "Emily in Seattle. I can tell them I'm flying out to see her. To clear my head. They'll love it. It gets me out of their hair. They'll think I'm giving up." "Perfect," Gary said. "How long can you make it for?" "A week. I'll tell them I'm leaving for a week starting tomorrow." "Good. Now here's what you do. You book that flight to Seattle. You book it on your main credit card, the one they probably watch. You make sure they see the charge. Make sure they know you're gone." "But Gary, I need to see you. I need the audit." "I know," he said, and I could hear the strategist in him, the lawyer I'd paid millions to over the years, taking over. "You're going to book the flight to Seattle, and then you're going to book a second flight from Seattle back to New York, landing at LaGuardia, not JFK. Book it under a different name. Benjamin Charles. Your middle name. Pay cash at the airport if you have to. I don't care. I will have a car waiting for you at LaGuardia. It will take you to a secure hotel room I've already booked. Harrison and I will meet you there. As far as Matthew and Evelyn are concerned, you will be on the West Coast mending fences with your daughter. A plan. A real solid plan. Gary, I said, my voice thick with a gratitude that was almost painful. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Ben, he said grimly. We're going to find out what these vipers have done, and then we're going to bury them. I hung up the phone. I took a deep breath. The tremor in my hands hadn't stopped. But for the first time in 6 months, I felt perfectly, terrifyingly steady. I went downstairs for dinner. I played the part of the defeated old man perfectly. I was quiet, my gaze downcast, my shoulders slumped. I let Evelyn fuss over my food, cutting my chicken for me, a humiliating act that made my stomach turn, but I endured it. Halfway through the meal, I looked up, my hand shaking, as I set down my fork. Evelyn, Matthew, I said, my voice intentionally frail. I've been thinking about what you said, about me being confused, and what Emily said. I think I need a break. Matthew stopped eating his fork halfway to his mouth. A break, Dad? What do you mean? I'm going to fly to Seattle, I said, looking down at my plate as if ashamed. I'm going to see Emily. Maybe I need to apologize to her too. Just get away from the company. You were right, son. I need to rest. I'll be gone for a week. I watched them. I watched them closely over the rim of my water glass. I saw the flash of pure, unfiltered relief pass between them. It was faster than a heartbeat, but it was there. Evelyn's shoulders, which were always tense around me, visibly relaxed. Matthew's face broke into a broad, concerned smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Dad, that's a wonderful idea, Matthew said, his voice oozing sincerity. Isn't it, honey? Oh, Ben, yes. Evelyn chimed in, reaching across the table to pat my shaking hand. Her touch felt like ice. What a fantastic decision. A change of scenery will do you a world of good. Get away from all this stress. Just relax. The next morning, they were almost giddy helping me pack. Evelyn laid out my clothes, hovering. Matthew booked the flight on my main credit card just as Gary had predicted. First class, Dad. You deserve the comfort. I'll have the car take you to JFK. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me gone happily. They walked me to the security gate. Evelyn gave me a hug, her cheek cold against mine. Now you just focus on relaxing, she whispered. Don't worry about a single thing back here. Matthew and I have everything under control. I'm sure you do, I thought. I waved a frail old man off to see his daughter and walked through the gate. The flight to Seattle was 5 hours of agonizing clarity. The fog was gone, but the beta blocker tremor was relentless. I felt like a prisoner in a vibrating cage. When I landed at SeaTac, Emily was waiting, her face etched with worry. Dad, are you okay? You look fine, honey. I'm fine. But we have to move fast. Where is it? This way, she said, grabbing my bag. My friend's clinic is 10 minutes from the airport. She's waiting for us. We didn't go to her house. We didn't stop for coffee. We drove straight to a private, discreet medical building. This wasn't Dr. Tanaka's busy midtown office. This was a quiet, high-end lab, the kind that deals with clients who demand absolute confidentiality. A sharp woman named Dr. Wu, Emily's friend, was waiting. She didn't ask questions about family drama. She just looked at the preliminary report I'd had Dr. Tanaka's office securely fax over. He suspects thallium, she asked, her voice low. He suspects something toxic, I said. He told me to get a full heavy metals panel, hair, everything, while I was away from my home. Smart man, she said. Let's get to work. For the next hour, they worked with terrifying efficiency. They took more blood, 6 vials this time. They took urine, and then came the hardest part. Dr. Wu took a pair of scissors and cut a thick lock of my gray hair from the nape of my neck close to the scalp. Hair is a timeline, Mr. Carter. If something's been in your system for months, it's in here. It tells a story. I reached into the inner pocket of my blazer. I pulled out a small, clear plastic baggie. Inside were 3 of the dull gray pills I had managed to palm and save over the last few days. And this, I said, my voice shaking. This is the vitamin she gives me every single morning. Dr. Wu took the bag, carefully holding it up to the light. We'll run a full-gas chromatography mass spectrometry on this. We'll know exactly what's in it by morning. It was done. It was 6 p.m. Seattle time. My flight back to New York, the one booked under Benjamin Charles, was at 10 p.m. We drove back to the airport. Emily was silent, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. "Dad," she finally said, her voice thick. "Poison. You think they're poisoning you?" "I don't think, Emily," I said. "I know. I've been off that gray pill for 3 days, and I can think again. I just need the proof." We parked at the departures curb. I grabbed my carry-on. "Dad, this is insane," she pleaded, grabbing my arm. "You shouldn't go back there. Stay here. Stay with me. We'll call the police." "No," I said, my voice hard. "Not yet. This isn't just about my health. I found something at the office. Something big. A $10 million forged signature. They're robbing me blind, too. They're not just trying to make me sick, they're trying to erase me. I need to go back. I need to get the rest of the proof." I hugged her. It was a tight, desperate hug. "This is the hardest part, honey. If Matthew calls you, if Evelyn calls you, I am here. I am resting. I am confused. I am the clueless old man they think I am. Can you do that for me?" She looked at me, her mother's steel in her eyes. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Be careful, Dad." "They're the ones who need to be careful," I said. I walked into the terminal, just another passenger on a red-eye flight. By the time Matthew and Evelyn woke up in New York, I would already be back, checked into the St. Regis under a fake name, ready for war. They thought I was 3,000 miles away. I was right on their doorstep. I landed at LaGuardia at 5:30 in the morning, a ghost returning to his own city. I was Benjamin Charles, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, and I had paid cash for the ticket in Seattle. Just as Gary had promised, a dark sedan was waiting at the curb. The driver didn't say my name. He just held a small, discreet sign with the word Yale written on it. He drove me through the gray, pre-dawn streets of Manhattan. It felt like a betrayal to be here, to be a fugitive in my own life. We didn't go to my home. We went to the St. Regis. Gary had booked a suite under the law firm's name. It was a secure, anonymous, and ridiculously expensive safe house. The irony was bitter. I was hiding in a $5,000 a night suite, while my son and his wife were poisoning me in my own mansion. I spent the next 6 hours alone, pacing the thick carpet, my tremor a constant, humiliating reminder of the chemicals they were pumping into me. But my mind was sharp. The fog was gone, replaced by a cold, glittering rage. At exactly noon, there was a sharp, precise knock. Gary Lawson entered. He wasn't alone. Behind him were 3 people I didn't know, 2 men and a woman, all in dark, severe suits, all carrying heavy laptop bags. They looked less like accountants and more like a tactical team. "Ben," Gary said, his voice grim. He skipped the pleasantries. "This is Robert Harrison. He's the best forensic accountant in the country. This is his team. They understand the urgency and the need for absolute discretion." Harrison, a man about 50 with piercing blue eyes, shook my hand. His grip was like a vice. "Mr. Carter, we're ready to begin." They didn't waste time. They didn't sit. They swept the room for listening devices. Satisfied it was clean, they set up on the large mahogany dining table, turning the luxury suite into a digital war room. Laptops clicked open portable hard drives, whirred to life. "Okay, here's the situation," Gary said, plugging in his own laptop. "While Matthew is enjoying his workday thinking you're hiking near Mount Rainier with Emily, I have just exercised your absolute authority as chairman of the board. I've initiated an emergency high-level audit citing potential external irregularities. The IT department was legally compelled to grant us full remote access to the Carter Holdings servers. They've been instructed under penalty of immediate termination that this audit is confidential and bypasses the CFO's office. He'll find out," I said, my voice hoarse. "Eventually," Harrison, the lead auditor, said, his eyes already scanning a screen. "But by the time he does, we'll have what we need. We are downloading the entire general ledger, all signed contracts, and all executive email metadata from the last 12 months. We're prioritizing the Hudson Yards West project." Those hours were the longest of my life. I sat in an armchair, my hands shaking, watching them work. The only sound in the suite was the rapid, quiet clicking of keys. They spoke in low tones, a language of numbers and code I barely understood. "Check the transfers to Hudson West. I'm seeing a flag on the vendor payments. Cross-reference the invoices with the signature logs." I was a king in my own kingdom, now reduced to a bystander waiting for others to tell me how badly I'd been betrayed. It was almost 4 p.m. Harrison suddenly stopped typing. He went very, very still. He stared at his screen. "Gary," he said, his voice quiet, flat. "You need to see this." Gary walked over and looked over his shoulder. I saw Gary's back stiffen. "My God," he whispered. "What?" I demanded, pushing myself out of the chair, my legs unsteady. "What is it?" Harrison turned his monitor toward me. "Mr. Carter, we started with the $10 million loan you found, the one Matthew said you signed in your study. And we ran the signature on the digital copy of the agreement through our verification software. It's interesting. The signature is a perfect match for the one on your 2024 annual report filing." My heart sank. The dread was so cold it stopped my breath. "So, it's real?" "I did sign it, I signed it, and I don't remember." The thought that I was in fact incompetent after all was almost worse than the betrayal itself. "No, Mr. Carter," Harrison said, his blue eyes locking onto mine. "That's the problem. It's not a match. It's an identical match. Pixel for pixel. The stroke weight, the angle, the spacing. It is perfectly identical." I didn't understand. "What does that mean?" Gary Lawson stepped in, his face pale with fury, but his voice was like ice. "It means, Ben," he said, his voice shaking with rage, "that it's a digital forgery, a high-resolution scan. Your son took your legitimate signature from a public company filing, lifted it, and electronically pasted it onto the bank loan agreement. He never even asked you." Harrison pointed to the screen. "It's not a signature, Mr. Carter. It's a stamp. This isn't just a family dispute over money. This is federal bank fraud. And if he's done it once, I guarantee you he has done it again." I stared at the computer screen in the St. Regis suite, the digital forgery of my name burning into my retinas. "Bank fraud," Harrison said. Gary was already pacing his legal mind, churning planning motions and injunctions. But I held up my hand. The tremor was still there, a constant frustrating vibration from the beta blocker, but my voice was cold and clear. "It's not enough." Gary stopped pacing. "Ben, this is federal bank fraud. It's an open and shut case. We have the digital file. This is a slam dunk." "It's a financial crime," I corrected him. "It's Matthew's word against mine. He'll just say I authorized it verbally. He'll say I'm senile and forgot. He'll use the very fog that they created as his defense. I have the what, but I don't have the how. I don't have the poisoning. I need to see them. I need to see the pill. I need to hear them admit it. I need undeniable, irrefutable proof." Gary understood immediately. The house. You need eyes and ears in the house. Exactly. I picked up my secure encrypted phone. I didn't call the standard security firm Carter Holdings uses. Matthew would have access to those logs. I called a high-end discreet security contractor. Gary recommended a firm run by ex-Special Forces. This is Benjamin Carter. I have an urgent high-priority situation at my residence. I need a covert surveillance installation. Audio and visual. Micro cameras. In my study and in the kitchen. And I need it done in the next 3 hours. No questions asked. The voice on the other end was pure business. The premises will be clear. My son and daughter-in-law live with me, I said. He is at Carter Holdings. She is at Mount Sinai. They will not be home until 6 p.m. You have a 4-hour window. We'll need remote access to the house systems, the man said. Gary Lawson has my full authority. He will grant you access. I want the feeds sent to a secure encrypted server I can access from anywhere. Can you do that, Mr. Carter? The man said, his voice flat. We can put a camera inside a sugar cube. This will be done. I hung up. For the next 3 hours, I paced the suite while Gary and Harrison's team kept digging. They were finding more shell companies, more suspicious transfers. But my focus was on the house. At 3:45 p.m., Gary's phone buzzed. The install is complete, he said. The feeds are live. They're invisible, hidden in the smoke detectors in the kitchen and the study. They're active as of right now. It was time to go home. It was time to step back into the cage. I had the St. Regis driver drop me 2 blocks from my house. I walked the rest of the way, deliberately shuffling my feet, allowing the exhaustion of the red-eye flight, which I hadn't slept on, to settle over me like a shroud. I fumbled with my keys at the front door, making a show of it just in case Matthew had his own cameras. I was the perfect image of a defeated, frail, confused old man. I pushed the door open. I heard their voices from the living room. They were laughing. I staggered into the doorway, letting my briefcase drop to the floor with a heavy thud. They both jumped up. Matthew's face, which had been relaxed, tightened. Dad, you're back early. I thought you were staying the whole week. I gripped the doorframe, letting my hand shake violently. I looked at them, my eyes wide and lost. I couldn't. I mumbled, my voice thick. It was too much. Evelyn was instantly by my side, her face a perfect mask of professional concern, but her eyes were sharp, analytical, assessing me. Ben, what's wrong? You look worse than when you left. Did you and Emily have a fight? I don't know, I said, playing the part. She's so angry at me. And the flight. I got so dizzy. I felt worse, Evelyn. So much worse. I think I made a terrible mistake. A mistake? What mistake? Matthew asked. Stepping closer, his brow furrowed. I looked directly at Evelyn, my eyes pleading, pathetic. I was giving the performance of my life. The medicine. Your vitamin. The gray one. I saw it. Just for a split second, a flash of pure cold panic in her eyes. The thought that her victim was off the leash. What about it, Ben? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I stopped taking it, I whispered, as if confessing a terrible sin. I thought maybe it was the problem. I wanted to see. And I felt awful. Worse than ever. The fog. It was terrible, Evelyn. I couldn't think at all. I think I need it. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. I don't feel right without it. I watched them. I watched the panic in Evelyn's face recede, replaced by something else. I watched the tension in Matthew's shoulders relax. I watched them exchange a look. It was not a look of love, it was not a look of relief. It was the look of zookeepers who had just found their escaped animal, confused and starving, waiting by the cage, begging to be let back in. It was a look of pure, unadulterated victory. Evelyn's face softened back into its familiar saccharine mask of pity. She let out a soft, forgiving laugh. "Oh, Ben," she cooed, patting my arm. "You poor thing. You scared me half to death. You can't just stop your regimen like that. You're not a doctor." Matthew clapped me on the shoulder a little too hard. "Dad, you really gave us a fright. We told you that stuff was important. You're home now. We'll take care of you." Evelyn smiled, her eyes glittering. "Of course we will. You just sit down and rest. I'll go get your coffee. And I'll fix your medicine a fresh dose. Everything will be back to normal in no time." I was in my bedroom, which I had now come to think of as my command center. The suite at the St. Regis had been for planning. My home was now the stage. On my nightstand next to the bed I had shared with Sarah for 45 years sat the tablet Gary had provided. The screen was split, showing 2 silent live feeds, the kitchen and my study. I had been awake since 5 a.m., my body vibrating with the high dosage of the beta blocker, but my mind was a razor. I was waiting. At 7:30 a.m. she appeared on the kitchen feed. Evelyn. She was dressed for her day at the hospital, immaculate in her white coat, her hair pulled back. She looked every bit the professional, compassionate doctor. She began her routine. She pulled the coffee beans from the grinder. She poured filtered water into the machine. It was all so normal, so domestic. Then she paused. She looked left toward the dining room. She looked right toward the main hallway. The kitchen was empty. She was alone. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a dull, painful thud. "Show me," I thought. "Do it." She reached up not to the cabinet with the coffee mugs, but to the small spice cabinet above the stove. She reached behind the neatly organized rows of paprika and thyme, and she pulled out a small, dark, amber prescription bottle. No label. I held my breath. She twisted the child-proof cap, her movements quick and practiced. She tapped one of the large, dull gray pills into the palm of her hand. She glanced at it for just a second. Then she walked to the counter where Sarah's heavy marble mortar and pestle still sat. She dropped the pill in. I watched my blood turning to ice as my daughter-in-law, Dr. Evelyn Hayes, methodically crushed the vitamin into a fine gray powder. She tapped the pestle on the side of the mortar, ensuring every grain was loose. She looked over her shoulder one last time. Satisfied, she picked up the mortar and dumped the entire contents, all of the gray powder, directly into my coffee mug before she brewed the coffee. She then placed the mug under the machine and pressed brew. The dark, hot liquid streamed down, mixing with the poison, dissolving the evidence. She stirred it. Once, twice, 10 times, methodically. She placed the mug on the silver tray and walked out of the camera's view. A minute later, my bedroom door opened. "Dad," she cooed. "Good morning. I brought your coffee. You must be exhausted from your trip." She was smiling. That bright, false, clinical smile. She handed me the mug. It was still steaming. I could smell the rich, dark roast now laced with God knows what. "Thank you, Evelyn," I whispered. My voice was thick, but she would assume it was from weakness and sleep. She watched me. Her eyes didn't leave my face. She needed to see me drink it. She needed to ensure her patient was compliant. I raised the mug to my lips. My hand was shaking, a combination of the drug she was already giving me and the sheer violent terror of holding what I knew was poison. I let the hot liquid touch my tongue. It was bitter, more bitter than usual, but I forced myself to take a small sip, just enough to satisfy her. "Ah, good. Thank you, dear." She smiled, her duty done. "Of course. Now I have rounds at the hospital, and Matthew is working from home today. Just rest. You've earned it." She turned and glided out of the room. The moment the door clicked shut, I swung my legs out of bed, ran to my private bathroom, and spat the remaining coffee into the sink. I turned on the faucet, washing the brown liquid down, scrubbing my mouth, my hands gripping the marble counter, as a wave of nausea and rage washed over me. I had it. I had the how. That evening, I set the stage for the second act. I was in my study, not at the desk, but in the large leather armchair by the fire. The television was on, tuned to some mindless news program, the volume low. The tablet was hidden under a nearby blanket, but I wasn't watching it. I didn't need to. The micro camera in the smoke detector above my head was live recording. I was performing for it. I let my head loll to the side. I let my mouth hang slightly open. I focused on the tremor in my hands. I was the perfect picture of a heavily medicated, confused, and fading old man. At 8 p.m., Matthew came in. He didn't greet me. He was on his phone looking annoyed. He walked straight to the large built-in safe hidden behind the painting of my late wife. I watched him. He spun the dial. My combination. Sarah's birthday. My stomach tightened. He knew it. The heavy steel door swung open. He reached inside, past my stock certificates, past Sarah's jewelry I kept there. He pulled out a thick blue legal-sized folder. He closed the safe, spun the lock, and only then did he turn to me. He stood there for a moment, just looking down at me. I could feel his contempt from across the room. "Dad," he said, tapping my shoulder. Not gently. I startled, blinking, looking up at him as if through a thick fog. "Matthew, what? What time is it?" "It's late, Dad," he said, his voice impatient. "But I just need you to sign something quickly. It's just some routine insurance paperwork for the company. End of quarter stuff. The lawyers need it." He opened the folder and dropped it onto my lap. He put a pen in my hand. I stared at the pages. They weren't insurance forms. Even upside down, I could see the dense paragraphs. I saw terms like collateral agreement and primary lien. It was another loan, or worse. What is this?" I mumbled, pretending to squint at the text. "Just insurance, Dad." "It's fine, sign here." He pointed aggressively to the yellow sticky arrow at the bottom of the page. I looked up at him, letting my eyes look vacant, trusting. "Okay, son. If you say so." I picked up the pen. I knew this was being recorded. I knew this was the final nail in his coffin. I scribbled my name, a shaky, pathetic, illegible scrawl. The signature of a sick man. The signature of a man who was clearly not competent. "There you go," he said. He didn't wait for the ink to dry. He snatched the folder from my lap, checked the signature, and closed it. He didn't say goodnight. He just walked out of the study, tapping away on his phone the folder, with my forged incompetence tucked under his arm. I waited until I heard his footsteps fade down the hall toward the kitchen. I reached under the blanket and grabbed the tablet. I opened the secure feed and rewound the last 5 minutes. I watched the entire sickening scene play back. The safe, the lie, the document, the signature. I had it all. The poisoning, the fraud. Both on crystal-clear, high-definition video. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the call from Seattle. I was in Gary Lawson's conference room on the 45th floor overlooking Central Park. The view was spectacular, but I saw none of it. For 3 days, this room had been my safe house, my prison, and my war room. Harrison and his team were at the far end of the long mahogany table, their faces illuminated by the glow of their laptops, speaking in the quiet, cryptic language of forensic accountants. Gary was pacing by the window, his suit jacket off, his tie loosened. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. None of us had. I was living on black coffee and adrenaline. I was still performing the role of the frail, recovering invalid for my family. I called home twice a day, my voice intentionally weak and shaky, telling Evelyn that the Seattle air was doing me good, but that I was still very, very tired. She was always so supportive, so loving on the phone. "That's right, Dad. You just rest. Don't you worry about a thing." My secure phone, the one Gary had provided, vibrated on the table. The screen read, Dr. K. Tanaka. My heart stopped. This was it. The results from the Seattle lab and his own. I picked it up. My tremor was so bad I had to use 2 hands to steady the phone. I pressed the speaker button. The entire room went silent. Harrison and his team stopped typing. Gary froze by the window. "Doctor," I said. My voice came out as a dry croak. "Ben, thank you for picking up." Tanaka's voice was not the warm, concerned tone of a physician. It was cold. It was the clinical, precise voice of a man about to read an autopsy report. "I have the results, both from my own lab's analysis of the pill and the full toxicology panel from the Seattle clinic. The results are conclusive, and they are identical." I stared at the phone. "The pill," I whispered. The gray vitamin." "Ben," Tanaka said, and I heard him take a sharp breath as if bracing himself. "The pill you gave me is not a vitamin. It is not herbal. It is not an experimental compound from Switzerland. The primary active ingredient in that capsule is thallium sulfate." Thallium. The word hung in the air. It meant nothing to me. It sounded like an element from a high school chemistry class. Gary turned from the window, his face pale. "Thallium," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "What is that?" I asked. "A mineral, a supplement." "No, Ben." Tanaka's voice was sharp, cutting through my confusion. "Thallium is not a supplement. It is a heavy metal. It is odorless. It is tasteless. It is perfectly soluble in water or coffee. It is and has been for nearly a century the primary active ingredient in rat poison." I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the mahogany table. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't breathe. Rat poison. My mind flashed an instant sickening slideshow. Evelyn in my kitchen, her back to the camera, reaching behind the spices. Evelyn at my bedside, that gentle, compassionate smile. "There we go, Dad. This will help with the fog." Gary picked up the phone, his hand shaking with rage. "Dr. Tanaka, this is Gary Lawson, Mr. Carter's attorney. Are you absolutely certain?" 100%, Tanaka's voice snapped back, all business. "The pill is thallium, but that's not the worst of it. The Seattle lab ran the hair sample. Ben, your hair is a timeline of this. It shows a clear, progressive buildup over the last 6 months. And your blood work, your blood is saturated with it. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This is systematic, chronic daily poisoning." "But my symptoms," I choked out, finding my voice. "The shaking, the fog, Evelyn. Evelyn said I had atrial fibrillation. She said the beta blocker was to stop a stroke." "She lied," Tanaka said, and the fury in his voice was palpable. "Thallium is the perfect poison for their plan. It's a classic. It's the poisoner's weapon of choice because it perfectly mimics the symptoms of a rapid natural decline in the elderly." He was speaking faster now, the medical professional in him laying out the evidence piece by horrific piece. "It doesn't just make you sick, Ben. It accumulates. It builds up in your tissues week after week, month after month. And what does it attack first? The nervous system. It's a potent neurotoxin. The very first sign of chronic thallium poisoning is a peripheral neuropathy, a persistent, uncontrollable tremor in the hands and feet. Does that sound familiar?" I just stared at the phone, my own trembling hand confirming his diagnosis. Then, he continued, comes the confusion, the brain fog, lethargy, memory loss. It attacks the myelin sheath of your nerves, slowing down your thoughts until you can't connect them. It makes you feel exactly like you're losing your mind. He paused, and his next words landed like a physical blow. And the final classic sign, after months of exposure: hair loss. Your liver enzymes, Ben. They're sky high because your body has been desperately, heroically trying to filter this metal out of your blood. It's been poisoning your organs inch by inch, day by day. The beta blocker. The beta blocker was a masterpiece of cruelty. Tanaka cut in, reading my mind. The thallium was the real, slow-burning poison, but the massive crippling dose of metoprolol was the accelerant. It tanked your blood pressure, it made you dizzy, and it created the brain fog almost instantly. It was the perfect smokescreen. It gave Evelyn a plausible medical reason for the very symptoms the poison was causing. It was a two-pronged chemical attack. She wasn't treating your cognitive decline. She was manufacturing it. Harrison and his team at the end of the table had stopped working. They were all staring at the phone, their faces pale masks of horror. Gary put his head in his hands. "I need you to understand what I am telling you, Ben." Tanaka's voice concluded hard as a diamond. "This is not malpractice. This is not a mistake. This is not negligence. The dosage of thallium combined with the beta blocker was perfectly medically calibrated. It wasn't high enough to kill you quickly that would attract an autopsy and suspicion. It was a slow burn, designed to last months, maybe a year." He took one final heavy breath. "They weren't just trying to make you seem confused, Ben. They were actively, medically, and methodically inducing a state of permanent neurological damage. They were trying to make you lose your mind, to have you declared legally incompetent. And if in the process your heart or your liver finally gave out from the strain, well, that would just be a terrible, tragic, natural death for a confused, sick old man." I was still staring at the phone on the conference table. The word poison was echoing in the silent room, a physical, sickening thing. Rat poison. They were feeding me rat poison. Gary had his head in his hands. The other two auditors were just staring, their faces white. I was drowning. The room felt like it was underwater. Then Harrison, the lead auditor, spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a scalpel. "Mr. Lawson, Ben," he said, his eyes fixed on his main screen. "You need to look at this, now." Gary looked up, his face gray. "What is it, Harrison? It can't be worse than what we just heard." "It is," Harrison said. He didn't look up. He just pointed. "The $10 million loan. That was just the test run. That was just the beginning." I gripped the arms of my chair. My tremor, which had been a constant companion, now felt like an earthquake. What do you mean?" "I mean," Harrison said, "that your son is a machine. The digital forgery of your signature, he didn't just use it once. He's used it 17 times. 17 in the last 4 months. He projected his screen onto the large monitor at the end of the room. A list appeared. A long list of financial agreements, loan documents, and wire transfers, all dated, all for millions of dollars. "We were following the $10 million loan for Hudson Yards West," Harrison explained, his voice a grim monotone as he navigated the spreadsheets. "But that was a distraction. While we were focused on that, he was bleeding the company dry everywhere else." 17 times, I whispered. "But the banks, the lawyers, wouldn't they want to see me, to talk to me for a loan of that size? They would," Gary said, his voice choked with rage. "Unless—" Harrison clicked another file. A new document filled the screen. It was a legal document, a durable power of attorney. It was dated 5 months ago. It gave Matthew Carter complete, total, and irrevocable control over all of Carter Holdings' assets, citing the founder's progressive cognitive decline and withdrawal from daily operations. "This won't," Harrison said, "is the key. He didn't just forge your signature on the loans. He forged your signature on this. And then he had it medically certified." He pointed to the second page, a physician's affidavit attached to the power of attorney. It was a detailed medical opinion describing one Benjamin Carter as suffering from severe early-onset dementia, prone to paranoid delusions and no longer medically competent to manage his own affairs. It was signed by Dr. Evelyn Hayes. I looked at the screen. I saw the words. Paranoid delusions. Medically incompetent. They had worked in perfect, horrifying tandem. Evelyn wasn't just poisoning me to create the symptoms. She was documenting those symptoms to create the legal paperwork Matthew needed to execute the robbery. While she was feeding me poison to make me look crazy, he was at the bank using her falsified medical reports to prove I was crazy. Ben, Gary said, his voice breaking. With this document, he didn't need you. He was you. He had the full legal authority to walk into any bank, sign any document, and leverage any asset he wanted. And that, Gary said, his voice dropping, is exactly what he did. Harrison clicked back to the spreadsheet. He didn't just mortgage the headquarters. He's mortgaged everything, Ben. The company's entire asset portfolio. The screen lit up with images of my life's work. The tower in Chicago. Leveraged, Harrison said, clicking. The 3 condo complexes in Miami. Leveraged. The undeveloped land in the Hamptons. The land you bought for Sarah? Leveraged. The cash reserves you were so proud of drained, used as collateral for margin calls. He wasn't just stealing. He was systematically dismantling a 40-year empire piece by piece and selling it for scrap, all while I sat in my study getting foggier, shakier, and thanking them for taking care of me. We've been tracking the wires for the last 3 days, Harrison said. The money didn't stay in the company accounts. It was wired out instantly to a series of offshore shell companies. The Hudson Yards West project, the one he told you about. It's a ghost. A corporate entity registered in the Cayman Islands. We've traced wires going from there to other accounts in Switzerland and Panama. I finally found my voice. It was a sound I didn't recognize, a dry rasp. How much? Harrison's face was grim. He highlighted the final number at the bottom of his spreadsheet. The total outflow. The sum of the theft. As of this morning, Mr. Carter, your son and his wife have successfully have stolen $40 million. 4. 0. In the last 6 months. $40 million. I had built a $100 million company. They had stolen almost half of it. I wasn't just being poisoned. I was being hollowed out. I was being erased. And they had left me with the debt, the leveraged buildings, and a company that was now just a shell primed to collapse the second I died or was declared incompetent. I could barely process the number. $40 million. It was an amount so large it felt meaningless. I looked at Harrison, my mind numb, my body cold. Where, I managed to rasp, where did it go? You can't just hide $40 million. Harrison's face was grim. He clicked another tab on his screen, and a complex flowchart filled the monitor. It was a spiderweb of logos and arrows leading from the central Carter Holdings account to a dozen smaller anonymous boxes. Oh, he's not hiding it, Mr. Carter. He's washing it. And he is moving it with terrifying speed. These are the wire transfers. He pointed to the largest arrow originating from the forged $10 million loan. This, he said, is the Hudson Yards West Project, LLC. The project Matthew told me about, I whispered. The one I was excited about. The project doesn't exist, sir, Harrison said flatly. It's a ghost, a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. It has no assets, no employees, no physical address. It is nothing but a bank account, a digital bucket designed to receive stolen funds. Gary, my lawyer, stepped forward, his face pale. He looked like he was going to be sick. Harrison, the signatory. Who is the signatory on that account? Harrison clicked his mouse again. A corporate registration document appeared. It was incorporated 6 months ago, Mr. Lawson. The sole registered agent and beneficiary. He paused as if to let the weight of it land. Is one Dr. Evelyn Hayes. My breath caught in my throat. Hayes, not Carter. Her maiden name. The name she used before she married my son, before she entered my home, before she started her campaign to systematically destroy me. And from there, Harrison continued, his voice a relentless monotone, the money is immediately wired out again. Switzerland, Panama, the Cook Islands. It's a classic sophisticated money laundering operation. They are systematically draining the company, Mr. Carter. They aren't just skimming. They aren't just stealing. He finally looked up from his screen and his eyes were cold. They're trying to take everything. They are leaving you and this company with the forged debts while they keep the cash. I gripped the edge of the conference table. The tremor in my hands was so violent it rattled the wood. But why? I said, the question tearing out of me. Why this speed? A company this size, the end-of-year books, someone would notice. The audits. Gary Lawson suddenly looked up, his face a mask of dawning absolute horror. He walked to the window, his back to me. The audit? He whispered. Harrison nodded grimly. Exactly. I was just getting to that. Carter Holdings has a major bond payment due in 30 days. I knew it instantly. The 30-year bond we took out to build the Chicago Tower. It was our biggest note. When that payment is processed, Harrison continued, the trustees will initiate the standard annual audit. That audit, Mr. Carter, will uncover this $40 million hole in less than an hour. They will find the forged loans. They will find the shell companies. And when they do, the company will be found insolvent. It will implode. I finally saw it. The whole horrific, intricate, and sickeningly brilliant plan. 30 days, I whispered, staring at the wall. Gary turned from the window, his eyes blazing with a cold fury I had never seen in him. And that, Ben, that is why they are poisoning you. That is why Dr. Tanaka found thallium in your blood. That's why the vitamin. That's why the crippling beta blocker dose. It wasn't just to make me look confused. It was a deadline. They don't need you dead, Ben, Gary said, his voice shaking with rage. Not yet. They need you incompetent. They have 30 days. Their plan is to get you in front of a judge armed with Evelyn's forged medical reports and your very real poison-induced symptoms. They need a court order declaring you medically incompetent to manage your affairs. Harrison picked up the thread, his voice as sharp as a blade. Once you are legally incompetent, Mr. Carter, that forged power of attorney becomes ironclad. Matthew gains total legal control, not just as CFO, but as your guardian. I finished the thought for them, my voice a hollow echo in the expensive room. And when the company collapses, when the auditors find the $40 million hole, it's not his fault. Exactly, Gary spat. It's the tragic story of his poor, confused, senile old father. My dad, Ben Carter, lost his mind. He made a series of terrible, paranoid business decisions. He bankrupted his own company. Matthew and Evelyn walk away clean $40 million richer. And you, Ben, you are left with nothing. You're locked away in a nursing home, too confused to even defend yourself, while they mourn the tragedy they themselves created. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my life's work. They wanted my reputation. They wanted to destroy my name to cover their crime. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. It wasn't just a robbery. It was an execution. A slow, meticulous execution of my body, my company, and my name. They were going to leave me a drooling, confused shell in a nursing home, legally branded as an incompetent old fool who had destroyed his own legacy while they sipped champagne in the Cayman Islands. The $40 million was the prize, but the destruction of my reputation was the cleanup. It was the perfect crime. I looked at Harrison. I looked at his team of auditors who were staring at me with a mixture of professional detachment and profound pity. I looked at Gary, my oldest friend, who seemed to have aged 10 years in the last hour, his face a mask of pale, sickened rage. The tremor in my hands was raging, a violent rattling from the beta blocker, but inside a new cold clarity was forming. The fog was gone. The confusion was gone. The victim was gone. "Gary," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the horrified silence of the suite. "I want them to pay." Gary turned from the window. His eyes were blazing. "Oh, they're going to pay, Ben. They're going to pay for every dollar, every forgery, and every single drop of poison. Harrison, you and your team have done your job. Pack up, get this evidence to a secure, redundant server, and send me the master file. You will speak of this to no one." The auditors, relieved to be dismissed from this family horror show, packed their equipment with silent efficiency and were gone in 5 minutes. The suite was silent again, just me and Gary. "So what's the plan?" I asked. "The plan is a righteous Old Testament-style takedown," Gary said, his voice dripping with ice. "We have the entire case. We don't need to dig anymore. We have the financial fraud, a $40 million wire fraud case that the FBI will drool over. We have the digital forgery of the power of attorney. And thanks to Dr. Tanaka and that Seattle lab, we have the medical proof of the poisoning. We're not just filing a civil suit, Ben. We're going to the district attorney's office. This is attempted murder, plain and simple." He was right. We had it all. "So I call the DA now," I said, reaching for the phone. "No," Gary said, putting his hand on mine. "Not yet. We have them. But they're smart. The second they're arrested, Evelyn will stop talking, and Matthew will lawyer up. Their defense will be exactly what they planned, that you were the senile one. That you begged them to cover your mistakes. That Evelyn was just giving you a placebo vitamin to calm your delusions. They will try to muddy the water, Ben. They will paint you as a paranoid old man lashing out." "Then what?" I demanded. "We let them get away with it." "No," Gary said. A slow, cold, calculating smile spread across his face. It was the smile that had won me millions in contract disputes. "We don't just give the DA a case. We give them a confession. We need one more thing. We need to get them on tape in a room admitting their intent. We need to nail the motive shut so there is no escape." I understood instantly. They thought I was in Seattle. They thought I was confused and resting. They had no idea I was in this room, that I was clear-headed, or that we had just dismantled their entire conspiracy. "They're desperate," I said, the plan forming in my mind. "They have 30 days until that bond payment is due. They need me declared incompetent now." "Exactly," Gary said. "They're running out of time. They're going to get sloppy. So I'll give them what they want," I said. I stood up. The tremor in my hands was still there, but I felt a strength in my legs I hadn't felt in a year. "I'm going to use their own greed, their own arrogance as the bait." "What are you proposing?" Gary asked, his eyes lighting up. "I'm going to call Matthew, tonight. I'm going to tell him my trip to Seattle was a disaster. That Emily agrees with him. That I'm scared, I'm confused, and I'm ready to retire. I'm going to tell him he was right all along." Gary's grin widened. "Oh, Ben, that's beautiful. That's diabolical. I'll tell him I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I'll tell him the purpose of the meeting is to officially announce my retirement and to name him my successor. Full control, CEO, effective immediately." "They'll be walking into a coronation," Gary whispered, savoring it. "And," I added, "I'll tell him to bring Evelyn, as my personal physician. I'll need her there, to attest to my declining health, to assure the board that this decision is medically necessary. We'll get them both in that room. They'll be so high on their victory, so eager to finally push the confused old man off the throne, they won't be able to stop themselves from talking. And when they do, you," I said, pointing at Gary, "will make sure the DA and a team of detectives are waiting in the conference room next door. You'll have Dr. Tanaka on standby. And we will have Harrison's entire audit, the toxicology report, and the video of Evelyn poisoning my coffee queued up on the main screen. I walked to the window and looked out at my city. They thought I was pudding in their hands. They were about to find out I was concrete. Gary, make the calls. Set it up. Tomorrow morning, my son is expecting to get a company. Instead, he's going to get a life sentence. I sat at the head of the boardroom table in my chair for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. The room was tense. The other board members, old friends, men I had built this city with, looked confused. They had been summoned to an emergency meeting for my health announcement. Gary Lawson sat to my right, his face a granite mask. At the far end, Matthew and Evelyn sat together. They looked victorious. They looked confident. Matthew had a folder in front of him, no doubt containing his speech, accepting his new role as CEO. Evelyn sat beside him, the picture of the supportive wife, her face arranged in an expression of solemn, loving concern for me. They thought this was their coronation. They had no idea it was their execution. I let my hands tremble on the table. I let my voice shake. I played the part they had written for me one last time. Thank you. I began, my voice weak. Thank you all for coming, as you all know. I paused, taking a shaky breath. My health has been, well, it's not good. I'm tired. I'm confused a lot of the time. I looked at my son. He nodded, his face the perfect mask of pained sympathy. Matthew, you've always said I should rest, that I should retire. Matthew leaned forward, his voice low and respectful for the benefit of the board. Dad, we just want what's best for you. You've earned your rest. I know, I said. I know you do. I paused, then looked up. I let my voice clear. I let it become the voice that had chaired these meetings for 40 years. Cold, clear, and absolute. But the funny thing is, Matthew, maybe my mind is a little clearer than you think. The shift in the room was instant. Matthew's smile froze. Evelyn's hand, which was resting on his, tensed. Gary, I said, my voice now booming with authority. If you would. Gary stood. This meeting is to review an emergency forensic audit of Carter Holdings initiated by Mr. Carter 3 days ago. What? Matthew shot to his feet. This is an outrage. This wasn't the agenda, Dad. What is this? You're confused. Am I? I said. Sit down, Matthew. Gary pressed a button. The large screen at the end of the room flickered to life. It wasn't a retirement announcement. It was Harrison's spiderweb flowchart. Carter Holdings at the center with dozens of arrows pointing to offshore accounts. What in God's name is that? One of the board members, Howard gasped. That, Gary said, his voice like ice, is a detailed map of $40 million being systematically siphoned from this company's core assets. The screen changed. The digital forgery of the $10 million loan, the forged power of attorney, the wire transfers to the Cayman Islands. This is, Matthew was stammering, his face pale. This is a misunderstanding. It's a complex leveraging strategy. Dad, you're not well. You're paranoid. You're mixing things up. I can explain this. Oh, I'm sure you can, I said, cutting him off. You've been explaining things to me for months. You and Evelyn. I looked at my daughter-in-law, who had gone completely white. You've been so helpful, especially in making sure I was too confused to notice a $40 million misunderstanding. I nodded to Gary. And, I said to the room to ensure I stayed confused, my son had help. Gary hit the button. The screen changed again. The financial audit vanished. In its place, the silent, high-definition footage from the hidden camera in my kitchen. The room was dead silent. We all watched. We watched Evelyn in her immaculate white coat look left and right. We watched her reach behind the paprika. We watched her pull out the unlabeled amber bottle. Matthew made a sound, a small, strangled noise. We watched her crush the gray pill in my wife's marble mortar and pestle. We watched her dump the gray powder into my coffee mug. We watched her stir it methodically before the coffee brewed. "What? What is that?" Howard whispered, his voice trembling with horror. "Ben, what is that?" "That," I said, my voice shaking with a cold rage, "is my special vitamin. The one from Switzerland. The one that helps with my fog." Evelyn was staring at the screen, her mouth open, her face a mask of pure reptilian panic. "Dad, Matthew was imploding. That's not... That's taken out of context. It's just a supplement. A homeopathic remedy. She was just grinding it up to help you swallow it." "A homeopathic remedy?" I asked. "For what?" "Confusion. Tremors, liver failure." I looked at the conference room door right on cue. "Dr. Tanaka, if you would be so kind." The door opened. Dr. Kenji Tanaka walked in. He was not in his scrubs. He was in a dark, impeccable suit, and he was carrying a slim leather folder. He looked professional, clinical, and absolutely furious. "Matthew Carter, Evelyn Hayes?" he asked. They just stared at him, trapped, their faces ashen. "My name is Dr. Kenji Tanaka," he said, addressing the stunned board. "I was retained by Mr. Carter 3 weeks ago. We ran a full independent toxicology panel on his blood, his hair, and the vitamin he was being administered by Dr. Hayes." He opened the folder and placed a single sheet of paper on the projector. The screen changed. It was a lab report. "The pill was not a vitamin," Tanaka said, his voice ringing in the silent room. "It was thallium sulfate, rat poison." A board member gasped, his hand flying to his mouth. "The dosage," Tanaka continued, his voice cold and precise, "was perfectly calibrated over a 6-month period to mimic the symptoms of advanced geriatric decline. It is a neurotoxin that induces tremors, confusion, and memory loss." Her medical report, he nodded at a frozen Evelyn, which claimed Mr. Carter had atrial fibrillation and early-onset dementia, was a complete fabrication, a medical fiction designed to cover up the real diagnosis. He looked at them, his eyes filled with professional contempt. He wasn't sick. He wasn't losing his mind. He was being systematically, chronically, and medically poisoned. I was still staring at the phone on the conference table. The word poison was echoing in the silent room, a physical, sickening thing. Rat poison. They were feeding me rat poison. Gary had his head in his hands. The other 2 auditors were just staring, their faces white. I was drowning. The room felt like it was underwater. Then Harrison, the lead auditor, spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a scalpel. "Mr. Lawson, Ben," he said, his eyes fixed on his main screen. "You need to look at this. Now." Gary looked up, his face gray. "What is it, Harrison?" "It can't be worse than what we just heard." "It is," Harrison said. He didn't look up, he just pointed. "The $10 million loan. That was just the test run. That was just the beginning." I gripped the arms of my chair. My tremor, which had been a constant companion, now felt like an earthquake. What do you mean?" "I mean," Harrison said, "that your son is a machine. The digital forgery of your signature. He didn't just use it once. He's used it 17 times. 17. In the last 4 months." He projected his screen onto the large monitor at the end of the room. A list appeared. A long list of financial agreements, loan documents, and wire transfers, all dated, all for millions of dollars. "We were following the $10 million loan for Hudson Yards West," Harrison explained, his voice a grim monotone as he navigated the spreadsheets. "But that was a distraction. While we were focused on that, he was bleeding the company dry everywhere else." 17 times, I whispered. "But the banks, the lawyers, wouldn't they want to see me to talk to me for a loan of that size? They would, Gary said, his voice choked with rage. Unless... Harrison clicked another file. A new document filled the screen. It was a legal document, a durable power of attorney. It was dated 5 months ago. It gave Matthew Carter complete total and irrevocable control over all of Carter Holdings' assets, citing the founder's progressive cognitive decline and withdrawal from daily operations. This, Harrison said, is the key. He didn't just forge your signature on the loans, he forged your signature on this, and then he had it medically certified. He pointed to the second page, a physician's affidavit attached to the power of attorney. It was a detailed medical opinion describing one Benjamin Carter as suffering from severe early-onset dementia, prone to paranoid delusions, and no longer medically competent to manage his own affairs. It was signed by Dr. Evelyn Hayes. I looked at the screen. I saw the words, paranoid delusions, medically incompetent. They had worked in perfect, horrifying tandem. Evelyn wasn't just poisoning me to create the symptoms. She was documenting those symptoms to create the legal paperwork Matthew needed to execute the robbery. While she was feeding me poison to make me look crazy, he was at the bank using her falsified medical reports to prove I was crazy. Ben, Gary said, his voice breaking. With this document, he didn't need you. He was you. He had the full legal authority to walk into any bank, sign any document, and leverage any asset he wanted. And that, Gary said, his voice dropping, is exactly what he did. Harrison clicked back to the spreadsheet. He didn't just mortgage the headquarters. He's mortgaged everything, Ben. The company's entire asset portfolio. The screen lit up with images of my life's work. The tower in Chicago, leveraged, Harrison said, clicking. The 3 condo complexes in Miami, leveraged. The undeveloped land in the Hamptons, the land you bought for Sarah, leveraged. The cash reserves you were so proud of drained, used as collateral for margin calls. He wasn't just stealing. He was systematically dismantling a 40-year empire piece by piece and selling it for scrap, all while I sat in my study getting foggier, shakier, and thanking them for taking care of me. We've been tracking the wires for the last 3 days, Harrison said. The money didn't stay in the company accounts. It was wired out instantly to a series of offshore shell companies. The Hudson Yards West project, the one he told you about. It's a ghost. A corporate entity registered in the Cayman Islands. We've traced wires going from there to other accounts in Switzerland and Panama. I finally found my voice. It was a sound I didn't recognize, a dry rasp. How much? Harrison's face was grim. He highlighted the final number at the bottom of his spreadsheet. The total outflow. The sum of the theft. As of this morning, Mr. Carter, your son and his wife have successfully siphoned $40 million. 40, in the last 6 months. $40 million. I had built a $100 million company. They had stolen almost half of it. I wasn't just being poisoned. I was being hollowed out. I was being erased. And they had left me with the debt, the leveraged buildings, and a company that was now just a shell primed to collapse the second I died or was declared incompetent. This story is a painful lesson that betrayal often hides behind a mask of care. It teaches us to always trust our instincts. When something feels fundamentally wrong, even if the world or your own family tells you that you're confused or mistaken, seek objective outside proof. True strength isn't just in building an empire. It's having the courage to fight for your truth, your health, and your legacy when those you trust most are the ones trying to tear it all down. Never let anyone convince you to doubt your own mind, especially when they are the ones providing the fog. Do you believe in trusting your gut instinct? Have you ever felt underestimated by the very people who were supposed to protect you? Share your own story in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where the truth, no matter how deeply buried, is finally brought to light.